Welcome to the Neuroflex podcast, where we teach you how to leverage cutting-edge neuroscience to optimize your brain performance. Now, here's your host, Toby Passman.
All right, welcome back to a new episode of the Neuroflex podcast. I am your host, Toby Passman. On the show with us today, we have a very special guest. She is a neuroscientist who helps high-achieving professionals get resilience and breakthroughs by utilizing neuroscience strategies in her neuromind mastery. And she's going to be launching her Neuroscience Academy, which is really focusing on neuromarketing for businesses to be able to leverage this cutting edge neuroscience to optimize their business performance. So without further ado, I'd like to welcome Farah Qureshi onto the show. I apologize, I'm probably butchering your last name there, but welcome to the show.
Thank you. And thank you for the beautiful introduction. It's such an honor. Like, I'm a fan of your work. So it's just amazing to be on your podcast.
Of course, I know, and it's likewise. I'm also a fan of what you do, and I know we've been following each other and commenting on each other's posts the past couple months on Instagram. So I'm excited to be able to have this conversation with you. I guess first, like starting off, like what you just mentioned before we started airing that you've had a 12-year-long career involved in neuromarketing. So tell me a little bit about that and just really what got you interested in doing that to begin with.
Yeah. So it actually began when I was a little girl. I just wanted to understand how our minds worked and about mental illness also, actually, because I felt like people were having it around me growing up. But I don't know if it's my culture or background or what it is, but it was like we were not speaking about it. It was like this invisible mental pain no one were talking about. And it was like, oh, your auntie is sick. It was like, she doesn't look sick as a kid. And then she said, no, she's sick up here or something like that. And I remember that they were saying like this, or they made those funny with the hands. And I was like, what is this? This is no fun. And people were like joking about it, but it was dead serious. And you were not supposed to talk about it. It's like a taboo thing. And I was like, I have to study this. What is going on? Why are people behaving in a certain way, even though we are told the same things? And also growing up with my sisters, we are so different people, but we were brought up in the same household. So I was trying to understand the whole human behavior, basically. And that actually got me into neuroscience. I was torn between psychology. I could have been a neuropsychologist like you. I was like
Mhm.
torn between those things, but I was like, no, science is so cool. It all makes sense. Facts are facts. So I like that. So that's how my journey began within neuroscience and studying business as well. So I did my master's in neuroscience and neuromarketing because I was interested in how to take that knowledge into businesses, implementing it. I thought that was interesting. So I did that for a very long time, 12 years, teaching companies how to take their marketing to the next level by understanding the human mind so they could actually make better content. And yeah, because we buy on emotions, right? So basically, I did that for a very long time. I created my own course. I taught companies how to implement this knowledge, and they could hire me as a consultant. And yeah, but then I got fed up with it, and and I was like, I want to use my knowledge, my neuroscience background more than just the neuromarketing part, and I actually want to help people. So I started off with a Danish podcast with a life coach that I worked with at that time, a couple of years ago. And we did that for a year. And then I was like, no, I want to take this internationally. And so I started my own mental health podcast from a neuroscience perspective, where you also invited, you going on soon on mine. So
Mhm.
I wanted to reach out to as many people as possible that neuroscience is for everyone. It's not for companies, or it's not for neuroscientists or psychologists. It's for everyone. It's basically, it comes down to how we break it down. Um, so started my podcast in July, and so I quit my job and I started my own business. So here we are today.
That is super exciting. And I also recently made that same transition of going full time into my business. So I get how that goes and just like the
That's amazing.
anxiety that can
Oh
induce, but
yeah.
also the great things that can result from doing that and the freedom. So I'm curious though, before we get into what you're doing now, with everything that you were doing and teaching companies with neuromarketing, can you share maybe a few things, like a few key things that you tried to help these companies understand when it came to making better advertisements that are really backed in neuroscience?
Yeah, I would say, like I said, we make 90% of decisions consciously and it's based on emotions. So having that in your content and having that storytelling when you're making commercials, I think that's very important. And especially the brain as remembers bad things more than positive things. Like pain it gets our attention. So the whole attention seeking, like how can you get that attention? Because our attention frame is only like 1 second now. It's like 1 to 3 seconds, which is nothing. So you have to get the attention from the consumers. So trigger them with something emotionally, meet them at where they at. I don't know what you're selling, but it could be anything, right? Maybe work with that pain, but then present the dream outcome because we all need hope. But they will remember the pain because that's something very much associated with themselves. So doing that, and I've worked with lots of different companies. People were selling different things. So it was like trying to understand their segment, trying to understand their market, and getting that done basically with their content creation. Um, so yeah, so I worked with lots of different companies, but they all had one thing in common. It was that they wanted to be different from the competitors. And that's how neuromarketing tools, we used Neurons a lot. The Predict, Neurons is just like an AI company with integrated AI tools for eye tracking. And you can use several tools to do that, EEG, just like you do with the brain mapping. There were several tools you can use and test. So we also did the whole testing of products, of the launch, everything. So we were ahead of the game compared to doing a traditional marketing where you haven't done the testing, you just test it with people, but you haven't actually take it to the next level. So we did all of that to figure out what resonates with their target audience and what, yeah, triggers their emotions. And yeah, so sales got up. Of course, it's more expensive to do it that way, but their sales got up. So that's what we all want, right?
So did you find that same kind of skill set that you were teaching to companies, did that start translating to like your own social media and marketing, like doing your own company now?
Yeah, so I'm not using the tools. So I'm basically selling through social media. Oh, they were
Right.
doing the Google ads and they were selling like on their websites and they had like physical products. And so there is a difference. My product's invisible. That's me. I'm the product, right?
Huh.
I'm selling
Right.
this, right? So I just started. I was like, where to start? And I was like, oh, I'm just gonna give it a go with social media. But I am working with coaches who are expertise in that field because I'm not an expert on social media. This is a new thing for me, basically. Social media is a new thing. So I haven't used those tools, but I do still have the knowledge how to create my content. And yeah, and I'm slowly growing and it's going the right direction with the content as well.
Because it just makes me think about like from what I've learned so far, and I'm by no means an expert in social media either, but try to surround myself with and learn from people who are a lot further along that content creation journey and just learning about creating like content or attention grabbing
Yeah.
headlines like in the
Yeah.
content, just something that's going to get people to stop scrolling or just using words like stop or don't do this,
Then you want to
avoid,
do it. Don't push the red button. And you're like, I'm going to push
and
it.
then you want, yeah, you got to push the red button now.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's interesting just to think about there's so much competition, I feel like, for eyeballs when it comes to everyone putting out content. And at this point, it's you have to have the content has to be have all this cool editing, the caption has to be enticing. Like even then, it's still like a competitive landscape, I feel like, when it comes to the content creation game.
Absolutely. It is. So I create content that I resonate with. So I just do it for me. That's how I started. Just and I think I just saw one of your posts, or was it a reel? You said you started out your journey. And I was like, we twinning. I commented that when you said
Y-
you started doing this for you and then people come because they can mirror themselves in you. So we do it for us
mhm.
and then you're just being authentic. And I think this is what it's about today is being authentic. People want that because as you said, there are so many out there. It's like a jungle, basically. So just putting out what resonates with you and you can be true to and sharing your knowledge because you're the expert within your field. And I think that's why they follow you and me because we are the expert within our field. and we're sharing our journey at the same time. So they're like, oh, okay, they're just as human as I am. And I think that's what really matters.
And I think going back to something you mentioned before, which is like making neuroscience applicable, where it's not just for scientists, it's not
Yeah.
just for psychologists, it's for anyone that has a brain. That's what I tell people. So I
We all
I
have a
like the
brain,
fact
right?
that
So
we all have a brain. Yeah, that's super cool. So what would you say as far as like the big concepts when it comes to like neuroscience for the layperson who doesn't have a lot of neuroscience background, but is looking to optimize their life, be able to utilize some neuroscience tools or techniques to improve whether it's their work productivity, their personal life? Like, what are some common things that you're coaching people on?
yeah, so I always ask them, so do you spend time in nature? Do you do mindfulness? Like the basics, going back to the basics, because they're not even doing that. Like spending 50 minutes in nature is enough for your like amygdala to calm down and you're just gonna feel lighter. So 15 minutes is not a lot, and we all have 15 minutes, right? And also during mindfulness, because many of my clients are jumping from one meeting to another, and they're like, I have a whole packed schedule like during the workday. But if you can just zoom in, do breathing between meetings, or just closing your eyes even and just having a mindful moment, like 5 minutes of pause is better than having no pause, right? I'm always like, where you at and how they can implement it in their lives. And also exercise. So I start with the basics. Are you exercising? And some are, some are not. And some want to do it. It's in their calendar, but still like doing the same old habits. But you can work out from home if you're busy. They're like, I can't go to a gym. Is that's okay? Whatever you can do for 30 minutes a day is better than not doing anything, right? So if you do it every day, you're still gonna feel better. It's gonna regulate your mood. It's really meeting them at where they at with the small tweaks in their lives before we build on something new, because there's so much as a person can do when they begin with something new. It feels scary, basically.
Right. No, I definitely get that working with people and people that I take through doing brain mapping and neurofeedback training. I'm always focusing on the fundamentals just because for one, it's going to make a huge impact. Just as you're saying, regularly exercising, getting outside, immersing ourselves in nature, it's going to have a huge positive impact, I think, on most people's mental health and their cognitive performance. But then also it's doing something like neurofeedback training. They're only going to get limited results if they're just wanting to slap on the equipment and not really change anything else about their diet or lifestyle. I always think, even though it's not the sexiest topic, just addressing those fundamentals for people can honestly, I think, make a bigger difference than going with like advanced nootropics or different technologies, even things that I utilize. But it's like the fundamentals are going to make a huge difference for people, especially if they're not already implementing them.
Absolutely. I think it's so cool what you're doing. And that's why I'm like, he's so much cooler because he has the cool stuff. You use the brain mapping. I was like, I have to have it. And when you told me the first time, I was like, that is so cool because I'm just operating from my knowledge. So I'm not scanning their brains, but I'm just looking at what they're telling me, looking at their behavior, analyzing that basically, and trying to make it as easy as possible to implement these new things in their lives. And once it's a habit, we can build more things on so they can become the happy version of themselves, because many of them just living in autopilot. It's like it all looks good on paper, but inside they're struggling. They're not finding that joy because they just keep on going from one task to another, being on autopilot, not zooming into themselves, not doing things that used to bring them joy anymore because they're adults now. So it's basically, yeah, going back to the fundamentals, like start there and then we build on.
So, for people that you work with that are already addressing the fundamentals, they're exercising, they're eating pretty healthy, what are some of the major causes that you've found amongst the clients that you work with in terms of why people may be forgetting words or having brain fog or just not mood swings, just not having the best like brain health that they could?
So sometimes there is some trauma from the past still impacting them. So I do hypnotherapy as well in my coaching. Yeah. So I tap into their subconscious mind to figure out what's blocking them, because many of my clients have some blockages they're not even aware of, something that could have happened in the past and still triggering them, holding them back basically. So I kind of work with that as well. So I have to unblock those things before we can really heal from them or be conscious about them. So one of my pillars in my program is called conscious living. And it's hard to live consciously, fully aware when you don't even know what's blocking you sometimes. So I do both coaching from neuroscience perspective, but I also do hypnotherapy because I think that's very important. Some things have happened to us that kind of still impacting us. That's why we sometimes procrastinate on certain things. That's why we self-sabotage some things because it's like a behavior of ours since we were kids, basically. So I do that in order for them to move. And that's been very powerful tool to use in my coaching.
Right. Yeah, it's hypnotherapy's always been like a modality that has really interested me just because it's like able to access and reprogram the subconscious mind that as we know, there's that tip of the iceberg analogy where they talk about around 5% of our brain activity is conscious and then the tip of the iceberg and then 95% is everything below water, part of the subconscious or unconscious.
Mhm.
And I think something that reasons that tools like hypnotherapy or the neurotechnologies or even psychedelics, I think why all these things are really becoming popular is because they're really benefiting people. And I think they're really benefiting people because they're really working on what's below the surface.
Exactly. And people get their answers. They're like, oh, wow, now it all makes sense. And then we can work on healing from it and implementing it, doing some different things because now they're aware and this, oh, wow. Yeah, I build on my hypnosis sessions because the breakthrough does not come from one session, obviously. And also it's a 90-day program. So it comes over time. So we build on. Everything takes time. But the 90 days is actually proven to be enough for people to experience change, to have healthy habits, to have the rewiring happening in their brain, everything. And if they wanna prolong, as two of my clients have, it's because they're not working on a new identity, a new person. They're new people actually after, because all of the trauma is gone and they have this new identity we are working on with now after the 90 days. So I'm working on different focus now than I used to with them. It's just interesting how people change. So yeah, I think definitely it's very powerful. Hypnotherapy is, yeah.
For sure. So I'm curious, tell me about you mentioned launching this new Neuroscience Academy. Tell me
That's
what
gonna
that
be
very nerdy.
Love it.
What
I
do
don't
you
know, you love it. I know that.
I definitely, yeah. I honestly, I feel like a lot of people, as long as you don't go so above people's heads, I feel like people
Yeah,
generally find the basics of neuroscience generally pretty interesting because they're getting to learn
yeah,
about themselves and how their own brain works.
exactly. And that is what we all want, right? We actually want to learn about ourselves. The ego is always highlighted. Like it's always about us, isn't it? And yeah, so making it accessible, presenting it in a manner that everybody understand. I think that's the beauty, uh, right? And also the challenge, because I do like nerdy stuff. And yeah, so the Neuroscience Academy. So when I used to teach companies, I'll tell you the story behind it. When I used to teach companies, I just had one course. Okay, it's like a whole day program. So they participated and they got some info and then they were like, now what? Like, and then they hired me. So that was like how we made money in the company. So it was not my company, but it was like, then they hired me as a consultant to implement it. I was like, why not make something like an academy or something, because there is none, make a program for other business owner, coaches, whoever it is, companies, um, people in business where they don't have to hire a consultant, where they can do it themselves or they have somebody hired in their company, but they actually get everything in there instead of just me teaching. So like me also coaching them to do it, implementing it. So basically the Academy will be a group coaching program. So we're going to take the knowledge, the course, and also implement it together because that's what I used to do for them. So many companies after I was done with it were like, is there a part 2 course or is there something somewhere we can learn more? And I was like, no. And so I thought, why not create it myself? So yeah, it's also a 90-day program, but different focus, very different focus, I would say, because it's for basically mostly neuromarketing, I would say. But of course, there's lots of elements of neuroscience in there. Um, and it is going to be a bit nerdy because I think it's for people who already have the fundamentals and they want to take it to the next level. So it's going to be nerdy for sure.
Love that. So I guess going beyond what we already talked about, just like the basics of what you were doing with companies with neuromarketing, like what are some of the other topics or themes that you're going to be going through in this program?
Yeah, like the same things that I did with them, but like understanding human behavior, basically. So I have to explain more in depth about how our brains work. So I will be working with exercises and how you can use certain brain areas and implement it in your advertisement or in your business. So we're going to be doing stuff like that, like for cognitive performance. When we look, we can do this exercise with our finger. There's going to be like when you focus on the finger, what do you see? You zoom out everything around you, but you only focus on this focal point. It's called something now. It can't come to my mind, but it's called the view is called. I don't remember it now, but it's yeah. So I have different exercises for different brain areas. Um, so it's gonna be something fun, I think. It's gonna be something practical, theoretical, and nerdy, but also implementing it on the go. And I think I haven't seen a program like that. Not for now, I haven't seen it. I've seen lots of courses. I've taken them myself. Sometimes you buy a course, you just buy it and then you see videos, right? And then you can understand and learn, but doesn't tell you do this and implement it like that, like on the go. I haven't really experienced that. So this is what I want to do.
Right. Yeah,
Yeah.
no, I feel like neuromarketing is a subject that I don't know is maybe in certain circles more discussed, but something like I have a limited experience with. I took one class in my master's program in psychology. There was like a neuromarketing course. And I found it super interesting, especially some of the research they've done with different types of brain scans like fMRIs and
Yes.
ERPs, like looking at
Yes.
how people's attention is or their emotional stimuli really activate certain areas of their brain. So it's super interesting. And I think definitely like an under talked about subject in general, like when it comes to neuroscience. So I could totally see the value there.
Yeah. And sometimes people say, is it ethical? You like mind fucking. It's words that I use. It's
Yeah.
no, it's not mind fucking. It's no, because you're just trying to understand how their brains basically work. And you have something, if you think you can help them with it, you're presenting it in that manner. But people have been discussing the ethics of neuromarketing or so you're doing this trick, playing their trick on their minds. No. But there's this stigma around it as well. I feel like there is. Sometimes people like just shuts it down. It's okay. It's been tested and yeah, we use all those tools. So it's been tested and proven to work. And no, it is ethical. It depends on what you're selling, I would say. So what are you trying to sell? It depends on that. Yeah.
Yeah, like with the ethical issues, like where do you think that certain companies might cross the line when it comes to maybe abusing neuromarketing?
Yeah. Right now, I don't know. Maybe weapons. This just comes to mind because all the war going on in the world right now. So this just
Right.
comes to like weapon. I don't see the value in that. So I'm like an anti-weapon person. But yeah, I don't know. You can turn it around like it's for protection, but it also kills, right?
Right.
So I don't know. That's a hard one for me, I would say.
What it makes me think of, I'm reading this book right now called The Battle for Your Brain. I think you'll find it really interesting. It's all about what companies are doing with EEG data or other types of like wearable data, brain data that is like just being collected. And at times, like people don't really know what the data is being used for. And there's all of these kind of concerns as far as whether like our employer is going to have us wear like an EEG headset and be able to tell when we're getting drowsy and or when we're showing up and we're hungover or whatever. Yeah. And which is not necessarily like too far from what could actually happen. So this book definitely brings up a lot of concerns, I think, when it comes to like just neuro data in general. But I could see people like not necessarily like the idea of a company like using their own brain against them, even though
Yeah, I can see
okay.
that too. I can see the ethical part of it as well. And also with the AI coming on like over the world, like people are afraid like it's gonna take over and it's gonna control us and everything is monitored and yeah, we don't have any freedom anymore. We don't have the right to just be us. And yeah, so I actually get that. I get those concerns, but I think it really comes down to how you utilize that info. Yeah.
Yeah, that definitely makes sense. Okay, so we covered some basics in terms of what you're going to be covering there. What would you say when you think about like just neuroscience and just like the future of it seems like a lot more people are like talking about neuroscience in ways that are more digestible. I feel like non academic or clinical stuff. I feel like someone like Andrew Huberman is obviously leading the way when it comes to
Oh,
that. But
definitely. He is. Yeah.
yeah,
He's
but
the
it
father of neuroscience. I call him that. He's the daddy of
right.
neuroscience.
Certainly for making it applicable and accessible to people who I think otherwise would not care about neuroscience at all, or maybe they
Yeah,
just
I think he's doing an amazing job. I listen to his podcast as well, and he has sometimes the long ones. So chunk it up. It's just like my weekly goal to go through the 3 hour or whatever. Because I'm learning a lot from him as well. I'm also learning from you. I think we're all learning from each other, even though we know the things, is how it's presented. For me, it's like, how is it presented? And when he gets those people on with different specialties, so I am learning because he has so many different people on his podcast, which I also try to, just like you do on your podcast, like trying to get different perspectives on even though the things. But yeah, I think it's really about how we present things. And now in neuroscience, I think it's peaking everywhere, just like you're saying. It didn't used to before. There weren't people explaining it like we are or Huberman is. It was like very the tough textbook academic language and no one were actually doing it. But maybe it's also because of social media now. I don't know. We have more tools now to do it than we used to. When I was studying it, I didn't meet anyone like that or see anyone like that. So I feel like now we're all doing it. And I had Nicole Neuroscience on my podcast. It hasn't been released yet, but she has like a 500,000 followers on Instagram. And she just started the page for fun 2 years ago. And now she has 500,000 followers and she's writing her book because she got approached. It's called Rewire. It's going to be released soon because she breaks it down too. She makes neuroscience accessible for everyone. So I think it's a very good quality to have because people just want to understand themselves. And I think we have the knowledge and it's our job to actually provide that to help as many as we can. And that's basically what we're doing, right?
I agree. What like other areas do you think as we go forward within neuroscience are you really excited about or like new research that interests you?
That's definitely Alzheimer's disease.
Yeah.
Because I don't feel like there's been a lot on Alzheimer's and now new research is coming up. Now it's actually showing because there haven't been many research on it, how much exercise actually keeps Alzheimer's away. And it is before the new research, it was told that it's genetic. Like if somebody had it in your family, you're probably prone to have it, right? Just like with autism. But now it's actually showing, no, you can actually break it. You can break the pattern. And my father has Alzheimer's, so it's also something personal. Um, so his long-term memory is perfectly fine. So he has had Alzheimer's for the last 6 years now, and he doesn't recognize my son, who's 4. And yeah, so he recognized the other kids that I have. So every time it's like a new introduction. But then he looks like me. Then he must be your son. So it's hard. I think Alzheimer's is a tough disease. So I have this personal interest in it. His family members had it. So I'm like, I get it. I not be able to recognize maybe my kids in the future or whatever. It's a terrible disease. So his long-term memory is like spot on, but the new things he can't like recall. So it's the short-term memory, right? That is not working. So new research is coming up. So I think Alzheimer's is very much interesting. What's happening in the brain? How can we try to improve it in the early stages, even though we don't have it, but how can we train our brain to not get it maybe? And it all comes down to healthy habits, basically, Toby. everything like exercise, nourishing your body, learning something new, basically. Also, like having your brain activated, even though you're 50 or 60 or 70, like learning a new skill, you can always do that. And people are like, no, that's only for kids. I can't learn a new skill because I'm 40 or something. So who said that? Why are you saying that? It's actually very good to do it and you can learn it. Maybe it'll just take longer. But activating your brain and having those social interactions. So it's not good to be lonely and old. Then it deteriorates and then Alzheimer's kind of kicks in faster. So I think that's very interesting facts coming out now. Yeah, so I'm very much interested in that aspect. Something we can try to prevent. I think I'm a big fan of that.
I literally have just been rereading this book called The End of Alzheimer's. Have you ever heard of it?
Oh, funny you're reading it. No, I haven't. Then I should read
Okay.
it.
You should. It's
I'm writing it
by
down.
it's by a UCLA neurologist, Dr. Dale
Okay.
Bredesen, and his work is all about basically like he is very unconventional in the sense that Alzheimer's has been studied in terms of like people trying to find monotherapies, like a single drug that's going to be the magic bullet in helping people get rid of Alzheimer's disease. Whereas Dr. Bredesen, he talks about basically like plugging the 36 different holes in the roof that cause Alzheimer's. So he uses this analogy to say,
I like
you
that.
know, the
Yeah.
roof is not collapsing from one single hole, in which that's what people are working on trying to plug. It's actually, he's identified up to 36 different contributors of nutrient deficiencies, hormone imbalances, all
Everything.
of
Yeah.
all of these different things, and how they all need to be fixed in order to turn the tables and help people at least slow down, if not potentially even be able to eventually reverse Alzheimer's, which is pretty tricky to do at this point in time.
It is. And yeah, so it just deteriorates with time. So he's getting worse and worse. And that's how the sickness is, basically. It's just hard to see your father not fully mentally being there. He's there, but he's not there. You know what I'm saying? So yeah. So I was grieving like 6 years ago when I think he had it longer actually, but that is when they said he had it. It was like losing my father, but he's still here today physically, but mentally he's not always there. So it's hard. I think it's hard to see someone being fully there, not being fully conscious. Yeah, he forgets all the time and it's not his fault, of course. And hearing the same stories. And it's just tough. It's hard. And it makes me feel sad that he's been so active always. Like he was very fit always. And he read so many books and he had hobbies. And so I was like, why did this happen to my dad? Like he was not this person. And it's, yeah, but then his brother had it too, and his sister. And it's, oh, wow. And I'm like, then I'm probably going to get it. But I'm like, no, I'm going to do all the things I won't get it. But you never know. I'm going to try not to get it.
Yeah, I definitely hear what you're saying there. Farah, we've covered a lot. Any last thoughts before up the conversation today?
Yeah, I would just say that as we just began the conversation, like neuroscience is for everyone. It's like just to get to know ourselves better. And you can do the fundamentals, but if you want to take it to the next level, I would recommend, yeah, working with someone who has the knowledge and who can actually help you grow. And you're going to get to know so much more about yourself. And it's like providing this toolkit you have for life. Once you have the tools, you can't really go back. Once it's implemented in your life, then it's like a habit and it's just going to make you happier. So yeah, that was the last comment.
Absolutely. Where can people find you? I know we connect on Instagram. I know you're on there, but
Yeah.
what other resources or places where would you direct people to go if they want to find out like more about your work?
Yeah. So Instagram is number one, I would say. But I also just launched my landing page. It's not a website, it's a landing page. It's one page. It's called Neuroconsulting. And I also have my YouTube channel, same name as Instagram for neuroscience. And I'm also on LinkedIn. I'm everywhere, basically.
Awesome.
I'm everywhere, but basically, mostly I'm on Instagram. I do most content on Instagram, but I'm also uploading all of my podcasts and reels on YouTube because people want to watch sometimes the podcast instead of just listening to it on Spotify and Apple. My podcast is called Mind Your Soul, where we talk about different subjects related to mental health. And then there's always a neuroscience perspective on it. Yeah.
Awesome. I'm super excited to be coming on your show soon. We'll definitely
Yay!
set that up. And yeah, this will be cool.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me, Toby.
Of course, it was a pleasure having you on and enjoy or looking forward to our future conversations.
Me too.
All right.
Thanks for tuning in to the Neuroflex podcast. Follow us on Instagram at Neuroflex and keep tuning in each week for new episodes. You can listen to the full audio episodes on Spotify or Apple Podcast, along with the full video episodes on our YouTube channel, Neuroflex Tech.